On a warm Saturday morning, the small park at the edge of town was full of life. Children laughed as they chased each other around the swings, parents chatted near the benches, and the sun touched everything with a golden glow. Among the people in the park was Marcus, a 35-year-old father with strong arms, broad shoulders, and tattoos that stretched across both of his arms and up to his neck. To many who did not know him, Marcus looked intimidating, but to those who knew his heart, he was one of the gentlest men anyone could meet. Marcus had promised his daughter, Lily, a special morning together. Lily was 6 years old, with bright eyes and curly hair tied into 2 ponytails. She carried her small pink backpack filled with snacks, a juice box, and her favorite stuffed bunny. For her, the park was like a magical kingdom, and her father was the knight who always kept her safe. Marcus walked beside her, holding her tiny hand in his large tattooed one. To her, the tattoos were nothing more than Daddy's drawings, and she often traced them with her little fingers, giggling as she asked about each design. They found an empty spot near the sandbox. Marcus placed Lily's backpack down and helped her climb onto the swing. With every gentle push, Lily squealed in delight. "Higher, Daddy, higher," she shouted, her laughter echoing across the park. Marcus smiled, his eyes softening as he watched her fly back and forth, the wind rushing through her hair. He was not thinking about his tough job at the auto shop or the bills waiting at home. At that moment, he was only a father enjoying time with his little girl. But not everyone in the park saw him that way. Across the playground, sitting on a bench with her coffee and phone, was a middle-aged woman named Karen. She wore large sunglasses and carried herself with an air of self-importance. When she first noticed Marcus, she narrowed her eyes. To her, the tattoos on his skin and his strong frame made him look dangerous. She did not bother to notice the gentle way he tied Lily's shoelaces or the patience in his voice when he told her to be careful climbing the slide. Instead, Karen's mind quickly jumped to the worst assumption: a man like him shouldn't be around children. She leaned forward, whispering to the woman beside her, "Do you see that man? He doesn't look right. Look at those tattoos. I bet he's not even related to that girl." The other woman shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with the comment, but Karen had already made up her mind. Meanwhile, Marcus and Lily continued their games. They built a small castle in the sandbox, using a plastic bucket and shovel. Marcus showed her how to pack the sand tightly, then carefully lift the bucket so the walls stood strong. Lily clapped her hands in excitement when the castle finally stood tall, shouting, "Daddy, we did it!" The pride in Marcus's eyes was brighter than the sunlight itself. He pulled out his phone and snapped a picture of her holding the castle, thinking about how he would later send it to his mother. His mom often reminded him how proud she was that he had turned his life around. Growing up, Marcus had been a troubled teenager, often judged for his appearance and background. But once Lily was born, his life took a different direction. He dedicated himself to working hard at the auto shop, saving every bit of money, and giving his daughter the childhood he never had. But Karen didn't know any of this. From her bench, she only saw a tattooed man crouching in the sand, and her suspicion grew stronger. She convinced herself that something was wrong. Her chest tightened as her imagination painted a false picture that the little girl might be in danger. Marcus picked Lily up and spun her gently in the air. Her laughter filled the park again, and several parents smiled at the scene. It was obvious to anyone watching closely that this was a father who adored his child. But Karen chose not to see it that way. Instead, she pulled out her phone, her hand trembling not with fear but with certainty. She dialed the police. "Hello, yes, I'd like to report something suspicious," she said in a hushed but urgent tone. "There's a man here at the park. He's covered in tattoos, acting strange around a little girl. I think he may have taken her. Please send someone quickly." Her voice carried enough panic to make the dispatcher take her seriously. Within minutes, police units were on their way. Back in the sandbox, Marcus had no idea of the storm that was about to fall on him. He brushed the sand from Lily's hands and offered her the juice box. "Drink slowly, sweetheart," he reminded her. She sipped happily and leaned against his arm. "Daddy, can we play tag next?" she asked with excitement. "Of course," Marcus replied warmly. "But you better be ready, because I'm fast." As she giggled and ran off toward the open field, Marcus followed with a playful grin. His heart was light, full of love for the little girl who was his entire world. He had no idea that, just a few steps away, someone was watching him with suspicion so strong it was about to change the course of his day. Karen tapped her foot nervously, glancing around as if expecting applause for her bravery. She felt certain she had done the right thing, that she was protecting the community. But she did not realize that her snap judgment, based solely on a man's appearance, would soon backfire in ways she never imagined. The sound of distant sirens began to grow louder. Parents looked up, puzzled. Children paused in their games as red and blue lights flashed at the edge of the park. Marcus turned his head, curious, unaware that those sirens were coming for him. In those moments, the park's cheerful energy shifted into tension. Some whispered, wondering what was going on. Others pulled their children closer. And Marcus, standing tall with tattoos visible under the sunlight, continued smiling at his daughter, completely unaware that someone's prejudice had placed a heavy target on his back. The sound of sirens grew louder as police cars approached the park. Children stopped playing, parents pulled their kids closer, and whispers spread quickly. No one knew exactly what was happening, but everyone could feel the tension in the air. Marcus stood near the swings, still smiling at his daughter, unaware that he was the reason those sirens were racing toward the park. Within minutes, 2 police cars rolled up to the curb. Their lights flashed red and blue, bouncing across the trees and playground equipment. Officers stepped out quickly, their faces serious, scanning the park. They walked straight toward Marcus. He froze for a moment, confused, while Lily clung to his arm. "Sir, step away from the child," one officer commanded in a firm tone. Marcus's eyes widened in surprise. "Excuse me," he asked, his voice calm but puzzled. "This is my daughter. Is something wrong?" "Please, step away from the child," the officer repeated, gesturing for him to move back. Lily's grip tightened around her father's arm. Her little face scrunched up in fear as she looked at the officers. "Daddy, what's happening?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Marcus bent down slightly, his tattoos visible under the bright Sunday. "It's okay, baby girl," he said softly. "Everything's fine. Just stay calm." Another officer gently but firmly took Lily's hand and led her a few steps away, asking her questions in a soft voice. "Sweetheart, can you tell me your name? Who is this man to you?" Tears welled up in Lily's eyes. She cried out loudly, "That's my daddy." Her little voice echoed through the park, but the officers continued their procedure. They had to be sure. Marcus raised his hand slowly, showing that he meant no harm. "I don't understand what's going on," he said, trying to stay composed. "I'm her father. My name's Marcus Taylor. I have my ID with me. You can check." The officers glanced at each other. One of them took Marcus's wallet and began inspecting his driver's license. Meanwhile, Karen, the woman who had made the call, walked closer with her phone in hand. She spoke confidently, almost as if she expected to be thanked. "That's the man," she told the officers. "I saw him acting strange around a little girl. Look at him covered in tattoos. Does that look like a safe parent to you?" Her words carried judgment, not facts. Several parents in the park frowned at her, realizing what was happening. Some even pulled out their phones and began recording the entire scene. Marcus remained calm, though his pride felt wounded. "Ma'am, you don't know me," he said in a steady voice. You don't know anything about me or my daughter. You judged me by how I look, not who I am. The officer holding his ID checked their system and confirmed the details. He's telling the truth, the officer said quietly to his partner. His address matches. And the child is listed as his dependent. Even with this information, Karen shook her head. You can't just trust that, she insisted. Anyone can make up a story. You should take the girl somewhere safe until you're sure. Lily broke free from the officer's hand and ran to her father, wrapping her arms tightly around his leg. He is my daddy, she cried again, louder this time, her cheeks wet with tears. The crowd watching began to murmur, some shaking their heads at Karen's stubbornness. One man whispered to his wife, she's making a fool of herself. It's obvious that's his kid. Another mother added, I see them here all the time. He's always with her. Marcus picked Lily up, holding her close. He looked at the officers directly, his voice calm but firm. You see? She's my daughter. I have nothing to hide. I've done nothing wrong. The officers, now realizing the mistake, softened their approach. One of them apologized quietly. Sir, thank you for staying calm. We just had to follow procedure because of a call we received. I'm sorry for the distress. Marcus nodded, though his heart still pounded with frustration. He had been treated like a criminal in front of his daughter, simply because of how he looked. I understand you're doing your job, he said slowly. But this should never have happened. Karen crossed her arms, still unwilling to admit fault. I was just protecting the child, she muttered. But the looks she received from the crowd told her no one agreed. For Marcus, the damage was already done. Lily was still sniffling in his arms, frightened by what she had just witnessed. He whispered into her ear, it's okay, baby. Daddy's here. No one's going to take you away. The police began wrapping up their check, realizing the complaint had been false. But the atmosphere in the park remained heavy. Everyone had seen how quickly an innocent morning of play had turned into a painful misunderstanding, all because of one woman's assumptions. The tension in the park hung in the air like a heavy cloud. Marcus held his daughter close, his strong tattooed arms wrapped around her small body as if to shield her from the confusion around him. Lily buried her face in his chest, her sobs soft but heartbreaking. Parents nearby whispered to each other, children looked on with wide eyes, and phones kept recording every second of the scene. One of the officers, realizing how shaken the child was, gently stepped forward and spoke in a softer tone. Sir, we've checked your ID, and everything matches. We don't see any sign of danger here. He looked at Lily and smiled kindly. Sweetheart, you're safe with your dad. But before Marcus could respond, Karen stepped in again, her voice sharp and insistent. You're making a mistake. Just look at him. Do you honestly believe a man like that is a good father? Covered in tattoos, standing here like he owns the place. This doesn't look right. I know danger when I see it. Her words cut into the air, drawing stares from the crowd. Some people frowned at her, others shook their heads. Marcus's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice calm. Ma'am, my tattoos are part of my life story. They don't make me less of a father. You don't know me, but you've already decided what kind of man I am. Lily lifted her head just enough to say through her tears, he's my daddy. He takes care of me every day. Please stop saying bad things about him. Her little voice, trembling but strong, carried across the park. The officer who had spoken earlier turned to Karen, his patience thinning. Ma'am, the child has identified him as her father, and our records confirm it. At this point, it's clear there was no crime. But Karen refused to back down. Maybe he tricked her. Maybe she's too scared to tell you the truth. You can't just walk away from this. That was the moment the neighbors who had been quietly watching began to speak up. A middle-aged man in a baseball cap stepped forward. "Excuse me, officer, but I've seen this man here many times before. He comes to the park with his daughter nearly every weekend. They play, they laugh, and he always looks after her." Another parent, a woman holding her toddler, nodded in agreement. "Yes, that's right. My son and his daughter play together sometimes. He's one of the most patient fathers I've seen. He always keeps an eye on her, never lets her out of sight." Their words carried weight. More voices joined in, each one supporting Marcus. "That's his little girl. He's always been good to her. He's not dangerous, he's a dad." Marcus felt a wave of relief mixed with gratitude. For so long, he had lived with people making quick judgments about him, but now, strangers were standing up in his defense. Still, he stayed calm, holding Lily close and kissing the top of her head. "See, sweetheart. People know the truth." Karen's face flushed red. She glanced around, realizing the crowd was no longer on her side. Instead of applause for her bravery, she saw disapproval in every pair of eyes staring back at her. But still, her pride would not allow her to admit fault. "Fine," she muttered. "But don't come crying back when something goes wrong. People like him always end up proving me right." The words stung, but Marcus didn't lash out. He looked at her with quiet strength and replied, "The only thing I'll prove is that my daughter is loved and cared for. You don't have to like me, but you have no right to judge me without knowing me." The officers, now satisfied, began to wrap things up. They told Marcus he was free to go and assured him there was no further issue. But they also gave Karen a firm warning: making false reports wastes valuable resources and can lead to consequences. Lily, still clinging to her father, whispered, "Daddy, can we go home?" Her small voice carried all the exhaustion of the morning. Marcus kissed her cheek and whispered back, "Yes, baby girl. We'll go home soon. Don't worry, it's all over now." The park slowly returned to its usual rhythm, though the weight of what had happened lingered in the air. Parents gave Marcus respectful nods, some even offering quiet words of support as he passed. "Stay strong. You're doing a great job with her. Don't let this get to you." For Marcus, those words mattered. They reminded him that while prejudice was real, so was kindness. The truth had come out, and people had seen him for who he was, not a threat, but a loving father. But Karen, standing off to the side, felt the weight of being wrong. The stares from the other parents, the officer's warning, and the little girl's tearful words all pressed down on her. For the first time, she questioned her decision, though her pride kept her silent. She had called the cops thinking she was protecting a child, but instead, she had caused pain, fear, and embarrassment for an innocent family. As Marcus lifted Lily onto his shoulders and prepared to leave, he glanced back at Karen one last time. He didn't speak, but his calm gaze carried a powerful message: judgment without truth only leads to regret. The crowd watched him walk away, his daughter giggling softly as she sat high above, her arms stretched out like wings. The moment was a reminder to everyone there that appearances can be misleading and that love cannot be measured by tattoos, clothing, or stereotypes. What had begun as a joyful morning had turned into a painful lesson. And though Marcus and Lily would heal from it, the one left to carry the heaviest burden was the woman who had chosen to see danger where there was only love. Marcus stood still for a moment, trying to gather his thoughts. The events of the last hour had been overwhelming, not only for him but also for his little daughter. Lily had stopped crying, though she still clung to his neck, her small arms wrapped tightly around him as if afraid he might be taken away again. He gently rubbed her back, whispering, "Daddy's not going anywhere. You're safe with me." The police officers, who had initially come with such intensity, now seemed calmer. One of them, a woman with kind eyes, looked at Marcus with a strange sense of recognition. She tilted her head slightly as if searching her memory. Then her eyes widened, and she said, "Wait a second, you're Marcus, aren't you? The mechanic from the garage downtown." Marcus nodded slowly, unsure of where the conversation was heading. "Yes, ma'am. I work at Taylor's Auto on Main Street." "Why?" Her expression softened immediately. "You fixed my car last year," she said with a smile. "I was going through a tough time. The repairs were expensive, and I didn't have enough money. But you told me not to worry. You repaired it anyway and only charged me for the parts. I never forgot that." The crowd around them stirred. Some gasped, others whispered. Suddenly, the tattooed man who had been painted as a threat moments earlier was now remembered as a kind soul who had helped others in their time of need. Marcus gave a small smile, though his heart was still heavy. "I remember," he said softly. "You told me you needed the car to get to work. I just did what anyone would do." The officer shook her head. "Not everyone would have done that. You showed kindness when you didn't have to. And now, here you are being treated unfairly." She turned to her fellow officers and added, "This man is not what he's being accused of. I know his character." Her words carried weight. The crowd, already leaning in Marcus's favor, now seemed to fully embrace the truth. People nodded, some clapped softly, and a few even called out supportive words. "That's the kind of man he is. See? He's not dangerous at all." Karen, standing just a few feet away, felt the ground shift beneath her. The smug confidence she had displayed earlier was now gone, replaced with visible discomfort. She crossed her arms, her lips pressed tightly together as her cheeks flushed red. For the first time, she realized how alone she was in her assumptions. One of the parents stepped forward, a mother who had been watching quietly from the swings. "I think it's important to say this," she said firmly. "We all have to be careful about the way we judge others. This man was simply being a good father, and yet he was treated like a criminal. That's not right." Another parent chimed in. "Exactly. His tattoos don't mean he's a bad person. They're just part of who he is. What matters is how he treats his daughter and how he treats others, and from what I can see, he's doing both with love and respect." The applause grew louder this time, echoing across the playground. Children looked around, confused but smiling as they saw the grown UPS showing support. Lily, still on her father's shoulders, lifted her head and gave a shy wave to the people cheering. The moment was tender, almost healing, for Marcus. The officers, now convinced that Marcus was innocent and wrongly judged, turned their focus to Karen. "Ma'am," one officer said firmly, "we need to talk to you. Filing false reports is not a small matter. You caused unnecessary fear, wasted public resources, and deeply embarrassed an innocent man in front of his child." Karen's voice shook as she tried to defend herself. I thought I was doing the right thing. He just looked so suspicious. I didn't mean." "Intent doesn't erase the harm," the officer cut in gently but firmly. "Next time, consider your actions more carefully. A family's peace was disturbed today because of your assumptions." The words struck hard. Karen lowered her head, unable to meet the eyes of the crowd. The disapproving stares of parents around her felt heavier than any punishment. She had wanted to be seen as a protector, but now she was viewed as the cause of unnecessary pain. Meanwhile, Marcus decided not to add more to her humiliation. His nature was calm, and he believed that dignity could be louder than anger. He simply said, "I hope this is a lesson. Not for me, I already know who I am, but for you, and maybe for others too. Sometimes the person who looks different is the one who cares the most." The crowd grew quiet, his words sinking in. They were not shouted, but spoken with steady truth. Even those who had been silent earlier now looked at him with respect, realizing that his composure was a strength in itself. Lily tugged on his ear and whispered, "Daddy, can we go now? I want to go home." Marcus smiled at her, nodding. Yes, baby. We'll go. But before leaving, he thanked the people who had spoken up for him. I appreciate you all. It means a lot, especially for my daughter to see kindness after what happened. The mother who had spoken earlier touched her heart and said, we should be the ones thanking you for showing us patience and reminding us what real strength looks like. As Marcus walked out of the park with Lily perched happily on his shoulders, the crowd applauded once more. Some filmed, others simply smiled, but everyone seemed to know they had just witnessed a lesson bigger than a playground misunderstanding. Karen, however, remained frozen in place. She had started the morning believing she was in control, but now she was left standing alone, the weight of her actions pressing hard on her conscience. She had wanted to be seen as responsible, but instead, she became a symbol of judgment gone wrong. The image of Marcus walking away, his daughter laughing again, his head held high, his tattoos shining in the sun, was one that would stay with her long after the crowd had dispersed. Marcus drove home with one hand on the steering wheel and the other gently holding Lily's small fingers. The late afternoon sun warmed the dashboard, and the sound of the tires on the road was steady and calm. Lily's eyes were puffy from crying, but her breathing had slowed. She leaned against the window and watched the trees slide by like green brush strokes. After a long pause, she whispered, "Daddy, did I do something wrong?" He glanced over, heart aching. "No, sweetheart. You did everything right. You told the truth. You stayed brave. I'm proud of you." "Why did that lady say those things?" Lily asked softly. Marcus thought carefully. He didn't want to plant bitterness in her little heart. Sometimes people make quick guesses when they're scared or unsure. But quick guesses can be wrong. The best way is to ask questions and try to understand. They reached their small home neat, modest, and filled with warmth. On the fridge were drawings of rainbows and scribbles of cars with smiley faces. Marcus made hot chocolate for Lily, added a few tiny marshmallows, and turned on her favorite cartoon. She curled up on the couch with her stuffed bunny while he sat nearby, rubbing his thumb over the design on his wrist, an inked line of tiny stars circling a date, the day Lily was born. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. Messages poured in from neighbors, friends, and even customers from the auto shop. "Just saw the park video. You handled it like a champ, man. We're with you, Marcus. Don't let it get to you. Give Lily a hug from us. She's a brave kid." He didn't know a video was already circulating, but it made sense. People had been recording. He typed a simple reply to a few, "Thanks. We're okay." Another message appeared from an unknown number. It was the officer with kind eyes. She wrote, "I'm sorry you went through that. Thank you for staying calm. If you ever need anything, please reach out." He stared at the words. He hadn't expected to hear from her again. He typed back, "Thank you for seeing me." In the kitchen, he rinsed Lily's cup and stood quietly for a moment. The day had been a test, not only of patience but of faith in people. He looked at his forearm. The ink there told stories most never asked to hear. The engine wrench on his left arm was for his father, who taught him how to fix things. The music notes along his right wrist were for his sister, who used to sing while they cleaned up after dinner. The little crown near his collarbone was for his mother, who always told him, "Hold your head high." He took a slow breath and felt his chest ease. 3 hours after the call to the police, the neighborhood app was buzzing. Comments appeared under the video, some shocked, some supportive, some reflective. Most were kind. A few were defensive, trying to explain why suspicions happen. But one comment stood out to nearly everyone. It was from the woman at the park, Karen. "I made a mistake," she wrote. "I'm embarrassed and deeply sorry. I judged a father by how he looks and not who he is. I caused fear and hurt. I'm going to apologize in person. I will also look for ways to learn and do better." I hope he and his daughter are okay. The thread grew longer. People encouraged her to follow through. Some challenged her to do more than apologize online. The conversation felt different now, quieter, less angry, more focused on change. At Taylor's Auto on Main Street, the bell over the door jingled as Karen stepped inside. The shop smelled like motor oil and clean steel. Sunlight streaked through the high windows, and the faint sound of a radio played a gentle tune. Marcus wasn't there, he was at home with Lily. But his co-worker, Duke, was wiping down a counter. "Hi," she said, voice small. "Is Marcus here?" Duke studied her for a beat. He recognized her face from the description in the messages. His eyes softened, but his voice stayed neutral. He took the rest of the day off. He needed time with his kid. After a pause, he added, "We all saw the video." She nodded, swallowing. "I deserve that. I want to apologize to him directly." Duke slid a small notepad across the counter. "You can leave a note. I'll make sure he gets it." Her hand shook slightly as she wrote. The words were simple, but they were honest. "I am sorry. I was wrong. I humanized my fear and dehumanized you. I will not make that mistake again." Duke folded the note and tucked it into a drawer with care. "I'll give it to him." Before she left, she looked up at the shelves full of tools. "What do you recommend for fixing damage you can't see?" she asked in a sad little half-joke. Duke thought. "Start with listening. Then keep showing up." Back at home, Lily had fallen asleep on the couch, the stuffed bunny tucked under her chin. Marcus draped a blanket over her and sat by the window with a cup of tea. The neighborhood app pinged again. He saw Karen's public apology, then a photo of a handwritten note his co-worker must have sent it to him. He read her words twice. He could feel the stubborn part of his heart wanting to say, "Too late." He could feel the tired part of his heart wanting to say, "I don't owe you anything." Both feelings were real, and he let them sit without pushing them away. Then he looked at the blanket rising and falling with Lily's breath. He remembered the officer's message, the neighbors' voices, and the quiet claps at the park. He remembered his mother's crown inked near his collarbone and her favorite saying, "Strength is not loud. Strength is steady." He typed one more message to the neighborhood thread. "We're okay. Thank you to everyone who spoke up at the park and who reached out. To the person who made the call, I accept your apology. Next time, please start with a question. My tattoos tell stories. If you want to know them, ask me." The next day, the neighborhood association asked Marcus if he would join a small community circle at the library. No microphones. No big speeches. Just people sitting in chairs, sharing. He didn't love attention, but he said yes. He thought of Lily, and the world he wanted her to grow up in, and decided a quiet circle was a good place to start. A week later, a dozen people gathered in a sunny room near the stacks. The officer with kind eyes was there, in plain clothes. Duke came, too, leaning back with his arms folded but smiling. A teacher from the local elementary school brought a notebook. And Karen came, clutching a small bag. She looked at Marcus across the circle and nodded, grateful he had agreed to be there. They talked about fear. They talked about how quick assumptions can close doors before a single word is exchanged. They all shared stories, good ones, hard ones, funny ones. The teacher said, "Kids ask questions out loud. Adults often do it silently and then fill in the answers themselves. Maybe we should be more like kids and ask out loud." Marcus explained a few of his tattoos. The wrench for his dad. The crown for his mom. The date around his wrist for Lily's birthday. People leaned in, surprised to find tenderness in what they once thought was only toughness. The officer shared what it felt like to roll into a scene with incomplete information and a responsibility to keep people safe. "I'm learning to talk first, even when time feels tight," she said. When the circle reached Karen, she opened the bag on her lap. Inside was a children's book about seeing people with curious eyes instead of scared eyes. I read this 3 times this week, she said softly. I used to think being careful meant being suspicious. Now I think being careful means being curious and kind. She turned to Marcus. I can't take back what I did. But I can do better. I want you to know I see you as a father, as a neighbor, and as a person worth listening to. Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Thank you, he said. I'm not asking you to forget your safety. I'm asking you to include my humanity in it. After the circle, people lingered. They exchanged phone numbers and made small promises, to greet each other at the park, to share a hello at the grocery store, to speak up kindly when someone slips into a quick judgment. Marcus taped a little flyer to the library board, community coffee first Saturdays. Ask before you assume. On the next first Saturday, a small group met at the park picnic table. Someone brought muffins. The teacher brought crayons and paper for the kids. Lily drew her dad with his tattoos as colorful constellations, and in the corner she drew a woman smiling. She carried the drawing across the grass and handed it to Karen. This is you, she said. You're nicer now. Karen pressed her lips together and took a breath that trembled. Thank you, Lily. She glanced at Marcus, grateful for forgiveness that had not been demanded but freely given. As the months passed, Marcus and Lily returned to their swings and sandbox. The park felt lighter, even on cloudy days. When new families arrived, someone would casually say, "That's Marcus and his daughter." Good people. The story that might have divided the neighborhood ended up connecting it in small, steady ways. One evening, as the sky turned peach and the cicadas hummed, Marcus sat on the front steps with Lily. She held his wrist and traced the date again. Tell me the story of the stars, Daddy. He smiled. These stars remind me that every night ends with morning. Even the tough days. Especially the tough days. Lily leaned her head against his shoulder. And the crown. That one says we carry ourselves with dignity, he answered. Even when it's hard. And the music notes. That one says we don't forget the song, even when the world is noisy. She nodded like she understood everything. Maybe she did. Children often do. Across town, Karen kept her promise. She attended more circles, volunteered at the library's family day, and learned to pause before judging. When she passed the auto shop, she sometimes dropped off cookies for the crew. Once, she asked Marcus about a new humming sound in her car. He laughed, listened, and fixed it in 10 minutes. Next time, he teased gently, just ask before you assume. On a shelf at home, Marcus placed a framed photo from the park's first community coffee, neighbors of all backgrounds smiling under the oak tree. The frame was simple, but the meaning was not. It carried the day's truth, that respect grows where curiosity lives, and that love is not loud, but it is clear. As he tucked Lily into bed that night, he smoothed her hair and whispered, "You're safe, you're loved, and you're seen." She reached up and tapped his wrist where the stars were inked. "I know, Daddy," she said with a sleepy grin. "Your drawings told me so." He turned off the light, and the house settled into a gentle quiet. Outside, the night gathered like a soft blanket. Inside, a father and daughter rested stronger than before, ready for morning.